Today's video is going to be a bit of a ramble. Just going to give you full disclosure right now. Everything that I'm about to lay out and express are from my own imagination about what I would want from Destiny. Now, I have ideas in my head about what I would want from a seasonal or an episode perspective instead of what we've been receiving over the last few years. Now, some of the priorities that I had when coming up and thinking about this redesign of the seasonal structure in Destiny were to maintain the freedom for players to choose how they want to play the game, provide meaningful progression and experiences for players like myself whose enjoyment of Destiny comes from getting stronger and progressing further into the game. Also, allow Bungie to utilize parts of the game and refresh content that they've made in meaningful ways that feel fresh to the player, and also provide meaningful rewards for players that do commit to the long-term forms of progression that I'm about to outline and play their game to the upper echelons of content. Now, the ideas that I'm about to cover would definitely be a shakeup from the seasonal model that Bungie has been delivering to us for the last few years, but it has many components that I believe allow Bungie to adapt this model and reuse it season after season while providing fresh experiences and meaningful journeys for their most dedicated players, while also providing the same experience that has kept their casual audience engaged and remain engaged to this day. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started. So during the year of Forsaken, Bungie introduced us to a model of content release that centered on 3 to 4 months of slowly introducing new missions, narrative, weapons, and gear, and also some endgame progression. These systems were refined with the release of Shadowkeep, where we were officially introduced to the seasonal model using the Season of the Undying, which had its own purchasing option, new season pass or battle pass as other games call it, and a more refined week-to-week structure of narrative delivery and content drip feeding. Since the release of Shadowkeep in 2019, Destiny 2 has had a new season launch approximately every 3 months, and the formula of those seasons has for the most part not evolved or changed in any substantial way. There have been some new introductions, such as the milestone system, which really is just kind of a bounty checklist of things to do as you play through that season. There have also been some cool game modes introduced, such as the Coil and Battlegrounds. Those, I will give to Bungie, were pretty nice. Now, in my previous video, I spoke a lot about the issues that kind of plagued the game that was resulting in a large number of Destiny's player base dropping the game after the first few weeks of a season and coming back at the ending of the season to see kind of what happens and how things come to a close from the story perspective. Now, sure, there's a substantial amount of people that still play the game and enjoy it, but when you compare it to the previous years of the game's retention capabilities, this year is absolutely the worst retention rates the game has ever had after Lightfall. Now, upon the horizon is Final Shape, the last expansion of this Light and Darkness saga. Bungie has went into some detail regarding the shakeup of their content delivery after we get Lightfall later this year. What we've been told is that seasons are going to now be called episodes. Episodes are going to be 4 months instead of 3 months, and this is going to allow Bungie more time with each release to polish, provide content, and absorb feedback from the current season and put that into the seasons in development. Now, there was also some hinting that the episodes would be much more focused on individual narrative stories instead of the overarching moving along the expansion storylines like we've got from the previous 2 years. That is a direct point that I brought up in my last video, so kudos to Bungie if each one of these episodes or larger seasons are going to have their own stories. That's a good thing. Now today, I do want to talk about the episodes or seasons and what they need to do for Destiny to pull players like myself back into the franchise in a way that Destiny, quite frankly, used to do and used to feel like. There are a lot of games in the industry that do seasonal releases that have player retention lasting many weeks, if not months, into their seasonal releases, and I'm going to be drawing pretty heavily from comparisons to other games that have seasonal release structures in my explanation in today's video. I understand that episodes are likely hard in development at Bungie, so me expecting anything of what I'm going to talk about today to ever reach Bungie's ears and be incorporated into the game, likely not going to happen. They may never even watch the video. But it's worth talking about. I think it's interesting. Maybe you'll find it interesting as well. So, firstly, let's talk about what I consider to be the most important aspect of seasonal content in order to hold my attention for longer than a week or two, and that is progression. Now, progression in Destiny has always been a hot topic because a lot of the player base just wants to boot up the game, shoot bad guys, and have fun. Now, this is perfectly fine, and I am glad that you're enjoying the game. I understand that putting barriers of grind to get cool things for you to shoot bad guys with sucks. I took this into consideration in my approach to the suggestion and the design that I kind of came up with today. The core problem to a player like myself is that Destiny, during its seasons, has low levels of new investment, meaningful loot, and progression opportunities injected into the game. They do inject them, but they're often shallow. Additionally, I've also heard comments from my audience who I believe are a little bit more casual than myself that it does feel bad to have some cool new things injected into the game that they then have to go do activities or participate in parts of the game that they don't enjoy in general in order to then take those cool items back to the parts of the game that they do enjoy. Basically, they are injecting systems and loot into the game, and players want to get the new things, but they want more pathways of acquisition that meet them in the activities that they love to play. Now, one of the most obvious examples that I can give for a system that feels shallow or pulls player away from the things they like to do in Destiny is the seasonal upgrade track. Basically, what this is a series of upgrades that can be bought by the player that provide gameplay changes or upgrades when they are running the new seasonal activity that is introduced during that season. Now, Bungie took our feedback over the years, and they have finally removed or redistributed these upgrade systems into different parts of the game instead of having them all on one menu in the helm or at the season vendor. Now, if I'm being honest, there has never been any of these upgrades in these systems or trees that actually make me feel powerful as a guardian. They never drastically changed the activity in truly meaningful ways for me as a player to care about these leveling systems, and oftentimes I would forget they even existed because to me it just didn't seem worth it to invest in it. On top of this, the upgrades were for the longest time time-gated, so that players who wanted to grind that first week in the new activity and participate in this upgrade system could really only get 1 to 3 upgrades per week, and they had to come back every week for about 6 weeks before the entire upgrade track was purchased. This also just made me completely ignore and not participate in that upgrade system, and oftentimes, again, forget that it even existed. Now, another topic that takes away from the feeling of true progression and the enhancement of players in Destiny, at least for me, is the arbitrary leveling system that Bungie has in the Year of Lightfall removed from the season experience entirely. In past years, when a new season would release, there would be an increase in the power level of our gear, which provided a grind for players like myself to run the endgame content, get higher level gear to drop, and then use that higher level gear to infuse or upgrade the gear that we already had at that time. I talked about in my previous video how the loot in Destiny has seemed pretty bland and fatigued with the dampening effects that Bungie has had to put on it to prevent power creep. And I understand why they can't introduce weapons like Mountaintop and Recluse that give us power creep. This game exists in a permanent space where everything can be used forever. So to that end, Bungie has to kind of water down the loot pool and the spicy things they could add for the sake of power creep. Now, when the game has a low or a non-existent pursuit of meaningful loot, the next progression system that players could and used to be able to turn to was leveling their character through the pursuit of higher gear and using it to upgrade their favorite gear. But this year, Bungie once again removed that system between seasons. When Lightfall launched, the season-to-season release cadence has not had a single raise in the power level of our gear. What this immediately did for players like myself is remove the other meaningful progression system that we used to engage with and consider it worth engaging with in the harder content. Harder content would give the highest level of gear jumps, which we could then use to upgrade our gear and climb that power level ladder that we were still latching on to as a reason to play the game. But now with that system essentially removed from the game, once we reach the power level cap during the first expansion, first few months of the year, I have no progression system as a hardcore player to engage with that provides a meaningful feeling of improvement towards my character. The primary reason that I play Destiny, and have played Destiny for many years, is I love the feeling of getting stronger as a Guardian, getting better weapons and armor, and the feeling of shooting bad guys, and moment-to-moment gameplay is great, and it's cooperative, and it can be experienced with my friends. My first priority as a player is the feeling of growing and becoming stronger to face new challenges, explore more dangerous parts of the world, and to contribute to my fire team in the endgame. If you're watching this video up to this point, and you don't consider your goals and reasons to play Destiny similar to mine as far as that long-form progression being your primary reason to play Destiny, then what I'm about to go into detail and suggest might seem absurd to you. And that's fine, because for players like yourself, I have taken that into account, and how I'm about to talk about the seasonal restructure and solving these problems I've laid out will also provide avenues for casual players to continue playing the game, experiencing it how they love, in addition to earning cool things while not having to go out of their way and play parts of the game they don't want. The solution to the issues that I've highlighted surrounding the progression or lack thereof for seasonal releases has actually already been solved by other studios in the industry, and that is that Destiny 2 needs a seasonal or an episode realm of the game. Alright, so after I've said that, probably 1 out of every 3 people watching the video clicked off of it. Now, those of you who remain, sit down, hear me out, and let's picture a world of Destiny where seasons or episodes don't suck for the hardcore players. Once again, this is me keeping in my mind that many people are happy with the current structure of the game and the way that Destiny 2 is. For those people, your playtime and the way that you interact with the game will not change as a result of the seasonal redesign that I am suggesting. So remember that as you're typing your comments like, I don't want to reset my character, but I can't get all this done in 3 months with my 8 kids and my 1 hour a week playtime. It's okay. You can keep on playing the game exactly how you play it. Nothing is going to change. The basic premise for an episode or a seasonal realm in Destiny is that Bungie has developed so much good content in the game that is seemingly not touched once players have run it once or run it a few times to get the gear from it that they need. Also, and perhaps more important for a large chunk of the player base, the best feeling in Destiny is that leveling experience, the getting new gear, finding awesome drops that combine big level jumps in power with cool perks that are crazy strong. It sums up to the leveling journey for a lot of players is that part of the game that they love. And the seasonal releases that we've got for the last 1 to 3 years just don't provide that feeling of progression and long-term enjoyment and strengthening of their character like the expansions do, with the large jumps in power and the injection of multiple new activities for those players to experience. The seasonal realm provides an avenue for Bungie to be creative and use more parts of their produced content than they ever have in the past. Within a seasonal realm, anyone who opts to participate and create a character in this season realm will start with a brand new Guardian at power level 0. Now, for the sake of consistency, that Guardian could have all of their transmog related items, microtransactions available to them so they can still have their player identity. Even ghost skins, ships, sparrows, and shaders are okay to be carried over in this realm of this seasonal character. But what it does reset is the player's collection for weapons, armor, weapon mods, and armor mods. It will be as if the player first loaded into Destiny for the first time, except of course for the stuff related to how their Guardian looks. Now, keeping in tune with what I laid out earlier, every season has a new season realm that launches that the player starts at player level 0, brand new. Alongside the season realm, there is the realm that is the permanent live game. This is the realm where we've been playing Destiny for the last 6 years, where the portion of the player base that has no interest in regrinding for their weapons and armor and aren't reliant on progression to enjoy the game, this permanent realm will still receive updates and new content, but it's going to be released exactly how it's being released today, where the player progress is never reset. They have immediate access to jump into the new season content, and all these activities are unlocked forever. They can keep playing forever, doing whatever they want forever. For anyone like myself who enjoys the journey of leveling, the feeling of growing in strength, and experiencing new things in meaningful ways, the seasonal realm might be worth a shot. Now, one of the most immediate responses that you might have when you hear the idea that I'm laying out is saying, well, you've reset our level to 0, but the only thing that Bungie typically adds during a new season is 1 to 2 activities, around 10 to 15 new weapons, and a few maybe new sets of armor. Is that injection of content really going to provide new and meaningful experiences that would warrant me to completely re-level and go through that journey again? And to answer you, I say no. Currently, right now, it is absolutely not worth that. Not on their own. But the seasonal realm that I'm laying out is where Bungie can take risks. They can introduce new and crazy systems that introduce power creep and bring new things into the game that could not normally exist in the persistent version of Destiny that lasts forever. Remember how we previously established that loot in the game for myself and others for a long time has kind of felt bland? Well, it's because that loot has to exist in an ecosystem where it never goes away, and nothing crazy strong will ever be introduced to overtake that. Bungie has a hard task, let's be honest. They have a hard task assigned to them where they have to bring new raids and activities in the game with new content and new loot worth grinding. But for a lot of players, including myself, the most immediate and important thing for me when I'm looking at running that content is the gear good? Is the gear going to be crazy strong compared to what I have now? And in the permanent realm of Destiny, they can't really do that. It has to be relatively at the same level of strength and efficiency as other things in the game, otherwise power creep. Well, the seasonal realm is where Bungie can do exactly what players like myself want, and that is introduce new systems, new weapons, and gameplay adjustments that create some crazy strong things that will naturally be brought back down to power when that seasonal realm closes and a new one opens. Now, put on your imagination hats with me. We're going to sit back for a few minutes here, and I'm going to lay out how I envision a seasonal loot and power progression journey to be experienced on this fictional seasonal realm of Destiny that I'm thinking. At the start of a new season, your new character that you just created is presented with a choice of playing in the seasonal realm, or you could play on one of your 3 characters that you have in the eternal realm or the persistent realm. If you start in the seasonal realm, you're going to start at level 0. Now, you're able to run the opening Guardian Rises mission in the Cosmodrome, and as soon as you get your jump ship, you can fly to the tower. Now, as you run activities, you engage in open world content, leveling such as lost sectors, public events. Normal greens, blues, purples, and exotics are going to drop exactly as they do normally in the game. A new section in the helm will be added that provides some focusing options for players to target, farm, and acquire the new gear that's added in the season. Now, this is where we're going to start diverting from the permanent Destiny realm. In the seasonal realm, as players get new gear to drop, certain gear is going to drop that has a special seasonal mechanic attached to it. This could be something like an additional column of selectable traits, a new leveling system that grants buffs and extra perks to those pieces of gear. Think of something like the artifact, but it's attached to a piece of gear. Or perhaps these weapons could maybe just drop with extra strong perks that are very strong or insanely busted, like the OG Micro Missile or Master of Arm perks. These extra layers of gameplay mechanics attached to our gear that we're talking about, the ones that are absolutely laced with power creep, can only be dropped and experienced in the gear in the seasonal realm. If you get weapons or armor or new drops in the permanent realm of Destiny, they will continue to drop with normal perks or ones that Bungie considers okay to exist in the permanent sandbox. Now let's get back and expand further in this seasonal realm. You may be familiar with the way that Bungie introduces seasonal armor and weapons. In the permanent realm of Destiny, what we play today, these are acquired by playing the season quests and running the season activities. But in this seasonal realm of Destiny that we're imagining right now, these new season weapons and armor sets have a low drop chance everywhere in the game, and a guaranteed drop chance when you run the season activity. You could get one, for instance, as soon as you hit the ground as a level 0 Guardian, in the opening mission in the Cosmodrome. These seasonal themed weapons and armor sets are special in the season realm of Destiny. Remember how Bungie would add some kind of special seasonal mechanic, some new perks, or special thing that occasionally will drop on some gear in the season realm? Seasonal weapons and armor would have enhanced or stronger versions of these mechanics or progression systems that are attached to them. Once players in the open world start to discover that seasonal gear drops with much stronger seasonal mechanics, seasonal progression systems, imagine the player base and the desire to gain access into the seasonal activity and start farming these new pieces of gear that have been released as part of the season because they are immediately attached and stronger with the season mechanics. Okay, let's come back to reality here for a few minutes. I've just laid out a system that basically allows Bungie to introduce power creep into this seasonal realm of Destiny that players can experience as they're leveling a new character. In the permanent realm of Destiny, these mechanics that introduce power creep are not available. This can only happen in the season realm, where power creep is acceptable, because once the season comes to an end, the seasonal mechanics that are attached to these weapons and armor will go away and become deprecated, and they will become their normal realm counterparts with normal levels of power and perks that players on the permanent realm of Destiny are available to get. Okay, so what I've suggested so far can be summed up with this. Seasonal realm, power creep, and crazy new things in the seasonal realm are acceptable. Also, have a permanent realm where things can be balanced for the health of the game. In both realms, new content is added when a season comes out, but in the season realm, new gameplay mechanics are introduced that add extra levels of spice, power, and progression that, in essence, can break the game. But in the permanent realm, they do not get these. And once the season ends, the acquired gear and the character progression that they've accomplished on the season realm will be moved to the permanent realm if that player chooses to, and the seasonal mechanics are disabled, and these weapons and armor become their normal permanent realm non-power crept counterparts. Now at this point, if what I'm suggesting sounds crazy and like a lot of work, it is. I firmly believe that this would be a major undertaking for Bungie. Essentially, to have two live versions of the game, one permanent and one seasonal. You would have separate pools of players to matchmake into activities. You would have another set of servers to store and run seasonal characters and the permanent characters. And of course, the most difficult challenge that Bungie would have to overcome, they would have to give us another separate vault for our season characters than the vault we have for our permanent characters. You know, now that I'm thinking about it, they may not be able to do it. Anyway, if what I've said has piqued your interest up until this point, that's good. I'm curious to hear your suggestions and thoughts so far. But I'm going to keep going and talk about some of the other ideas that I have that Bungie could incorporate to really shake up this episode or seasonal structure that I've laid out so far. So we've already established that in this season realm, Bungie could incorporate seasonal mechanics and systems that add new levels of power and insanity into the sandbox. But these new levels of power, how can it be justified to use them? Well, in Destiny today, a player can level up to 1810 power level. In the permanent realm of Destiny, starting the player out at level 1600 and keeping the floor of all activities at 1600 can continue to exist. It makes sense that in the permanent realm of Destiny, having everybody in the same field of play from the beginning makes sense. In the season realm, where there is a focus and emphasis on releveling, the revamped gameplay and mechanics, Bungie can leverage a lot of the activities they've made over the years, specifically the 16 endgame activities that are in the game right now. There exist 8 raids and 8 dungeons. So let's go back into this imaginary realm of Destiny for a second that we've established and imagine what could be done to introduce and revamp the progression system. We have a power leveling journey of 1810 levels of power. Remember, in the season realm, you start at 0. Players in the season realm will start out at 0, and then they can make jumps of power simply from acquiring gear in the open patrol spaces of Destiny. Doing more specific activities such as public events, bounties, lost sectors are going to provide gear drops with jumps in power. Running the core playlist activities like Crucible, Gambit, Strikes can also provide good jumps of power for players. Eventually, players are going to reach their first gear score capstone of 400 power level. Once a player reaches 400 power level, they're going to receive a seasonal quest from the tower that advises them to complete one challenge of their choosing in order to unlock the next tier of gameplay that will allow them to continue leveling above 400. The seasonal capstone quest needs to provide a wide array of options for players who like to do all types of content so that Bungie doesn't force players into parts of the game for the sake of character progression. An example of the quest would look something like this. You've reached the seasonal milestone of 400 power level. As a test of your character, you'll need to complete one of the following challenges. On completion of this challenge, you will unlock further power level progression that exceeds 400 power level. One of the objectives the player could complete a full Vault of Glass or King's Fall raid. Complete the Pit of Heresy and the Duality Dungeon. Earn points by playing Gambit or Crucible. 100 points is needed. Crucible wins, net 10 points. Crucible losses, net 5 points. Gambit wins, net 10 points. Gambit losses, net 10 points. Complete all lost sectors on the EDZ on Legend difficulty. Earn points by completing the seasonal activity. 100 points needed in total. Normal mode will reward 15 points. Legend completions will reward 35 points. Now, what I've just outlined again is an example of what a seasonal capstone quest could look like in a seasoned realm of Destiny, where you, the player, are going on a leveling journey again with your character from 0 to 1810. It's a long one. You've progressed so far by doing anything you want in the game, and now you've reached the point where some harder activities are going to begin to unlock, and as a test of your character's strength and your progression in the game, you are tasked with completing one of those 5 challenges the quest has made available to you. If you choose not to partake in one particular type of content, then there are 4 additional options, such as Crucible and Gambit, that you could use to complete your capstone quest at this stage in your power level journey. Once you, the player, satisfy one of these challenges, your first seasonal capstone quest is completed, and you are now going to be getting drops above 400. This system would repeat itself at level 800, 1200, and 1600. The activities and challenges at each of these capstones would be different, but still provide players with various avenues of completion so that they can move further into the progression ladder without forcing them to participate in parts of the game they don't like. Now, one question that you might start to ask yourself is, why are we climbing our power level? Why not just stay at 400 forever? In this example that I've given to you, Vault of Glass and King's Fall, as well as the Pit of Heresy and Duality dungeons, are endgame activities that become available once you reach 400. These endgame activities only become unlocked and the loot within those activities acquirable once you have reached 400 power level. Seasonally, Bungie could add new systems, perks, and modifiers into these activities to add some variation and mix up to them. Also, these activities will be the best source of power level progression while you are in the 400 to 800 level of power. Bungie could also tie destination access, strike availability, campaign availability such as the Beyond Light quest, the Witch Queen quest, and the Lightfall quest, open world content behind these capstone completions. As you progress further and further into the power level tiers, as you complete more and more capstone quests, more parts of the game become unlocked and therefore can be used to farm for gear to continue pushing yourself higher and higher. Now, one thing with this theoretical world of Destiny is that content does not become non-important once you've moved beyond that leveling tier. So in the example quest I gave earlier, Vault of Glass and King's Fall were what were required to reach the next capstone. But once you complete that capstone, Vault of Glass and King's Fall would continue to reward you with power even once you had completed the next few capstone quests. The same goes for all content within the game. The goal is to increase the availability and options for the player to partake in more parts of the game they enjoy, all the while making meaningful progression on their power level journey. Once the player reaches 1600 power level in this fictional world that we're outlining, and they've completed their final capstone quest, leveling from all activities will begin to get slow. All endgame content, such as the raids, dungeons, will start rewarding lower levels of power increases, with the open world content and playlist activities rewarding power increases but more sparsely. The journey from 1600 to 1800 will be more grindy and become the new endgame. Players are still able to accomplish this by performing any activity in the game, but an emphasis on better progression is going to come from the harder activities. So once a player reaches 1800, Bungie's pinnacle power system could become available for them. Once a player reaches 1800, the master version of all dungeons and raids becomes available. Master raid weapons and armor are guaranteed to drop with this seasonal mechanic that Bungie has added to the season realm, making these weapons and armor in the seasonal realm much more powerful. And they also retain their crafting enhanceability function similar to how they do master loot in the game today. These weapons and armor sets are the best in the game, and the only way to acquire them is going to be from the master raids and the master dungeons unlocked at 1800 power level. The activity difficulty is set to the current pinnacle cap, which is in today's numbers 1810. And Bungie would also enforce contest modifiers and rule sets to enforce difficulty within this absolute pinnacle echelon of content. Master raid completions in the seasonal realm would unlock season variants of endgame weapons and armor that have unique ornaments, shaders, and styles that stay true to that raid's theme, but also showcase that the player unlocked them in the seasonal capacity, allowing them to showcase their journey and the accomplishment before them. These cosmetics would be unlocked account-wide, and players could use them similar to transmogs in any realm they choose, future season realms, or even in the permanent realm. But the acquisition of them is only from the seasonal master raids, which, as I've outlined, would have quite a journey attached with them. With this progression system of long-form power leveling, capstone quests every 400 levels, a clear goal of acquiring the master mode armor and weapon sets for seasons, and game-wide access to progression through various activities for players who enjoy all types of content, I believe that Bungie could really have some sticking power around Destiny again. Now, I would like to highlight quickly nearly everything that I've just outlined in this season progression redesign would allow Bungie to leverage and use content that they've already made in the game. The new additions per season would primarily be making new cosmetics for the master mode weapons and armor, the season mechanic of power, such as skill trees on weapons or maybe some kind of special upgrading system that is really strong on these weapons and armor. Also, Bungie could swap in and out which activities make up the season capstone quest. In the example that I laid out earlier, you may need to complete Vault of Glass or Crota's End to level from 4 to 800. During episode 2 or the next season, this capstone quest might ask the player to do King's Fall or Last Wish. Bungie could even mix things up and add something from the Destiny content vault like Leviathan or Eater of Worlds for a real surprise to the players. As I've previously mentioned, this redesign of seasonal system would require an extreme work from Bungie initially. That is not something that I am saying could be done easily. But I do believe that after the initial system and structure that I've outlined is built for the first time, Bungie's primary job and responsibility, season to season, now becomes to make the seasonal quest an activity, similar to how they're already doing. They would need to mix around the activities that are available at these capstone thresholds that we've established, and they would also need to produce the cosmetics that incentivize players to climb and achieve the master raids in the season realm. To me, the initial investment and redesign of the seasonal world of Destiny would prove to be a huge asset, as it provides the foundation for Bungie to iterate and shake up every season while providing a baseline that gives player progression every season without some kind of major redesign by Bungie every season. It also would exist on its own realm of the game, allowing Bungie the ultimate flexibility to be creative with things they've always wanted to introduce to the game. The seasonal realm would be the place where pinnacle power of Mountaintop, Recluse, Luna's Howl exist, Warmind cells exist, Self-Res Warlock exist all the time. And for the players who want to play the game as they've enjoyed it and played consistently in the Bungie season model for the last 3 years, that's okay too, because their characters and progression are permanent and maintained on the permanent realm forever, and they have access to season content as they have for the last few months and years. Okay, I think I'm done. You can go ahead and take off your imagination hats for now. Major kudos to you for sitting around. This, again, is just me dreaming about the game that I would love to play and make some changes and providing someone like me with the ability to fall in love with Destiny again and again and again in a seasonal capacity. Thanks for hanging out, sticking around, and hearing what I want from the game. And I would love to hear if you have similar ideas, opinions about the idea that I have, other than Bungie will never do it. That's already the comments I get from my friends when I tell them something like this. But if you want to tell me nonetheless, I'd be happy to read your comment. If you think it's good, if you think it's bad, or if maybe you would love to see something like this in the season realm, or if you have ideas yourself, I'd be curious to hear them. Anyway, thanks for watching. I will see you again soon.